Hello, welcome to this Atelier Read Speaker at VoiceTech Paris 2021. My name is Roy Lindemann. I am the CMO at Read Speaker. And this atelier is about multilingual text-to-speech innovations and its specific use cases for the future. And I'm really happy to be joined in this atelier with our speech scientist, Marcel de Carte. So, Marcel, could you shortly introduce yourself to the audience? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me here. My name is Marcel. I'm part of the Read Speaker's research and development team. And I've been part of Read Speaker for about 4 years now. Our team is responsible for improving the quality of our text-to-speech voices and for empowering our voices with extra capabilities. And what I've been doing recently is focusing on one of such capabilities, which we call multilingual synthesis. And this is the ability to let a speaker produce realistic synthetic speech in another language.
Thanks, Marcel. So, in short, how does multilingual text-to-speech actually work?
Yeah, so for that, we need to look at what we usually do with TTS. So usually when we make recordings with a voice talent, we can only ask the voice talent to record in its native language, or maybe, if we're lucky, maybe 2 other languages, but this is already not so common. So this can be a limitation in certain cases where you want a voice to express speech in another language that they're not familiar with themselves. So what we try to do with multilingual synthesis is to go beyond the limitations of what languages a voice can speak her or his themselves, and instead try to extrapolate speaker characteristics that are defining for how the voice sounds and feels like. And what we then try to do is learn how particular sound should sound like in a particular language. And if we can disentangle this speaker and language information well enough, then we can try to make a combination of any speaker and language. And this has a lot of potential. And if we do this well, then we can end up with a voice that is able to speak a language in a fluent manner, even if the voice artist doesn't even know how to speak that language.
Yeah, really interesting. So what are typically the challenges that need to be overcome in order to make a multilingual synthesis?
So one of the hardest things to do is sort of what I just said, is like to actually disentangle the speaker and language information from each other, because this is something that a voice talent does not do by itself. So you need to find out what should be considered speaker information and what is language information. And for example, with prosody, if it's like speaker specific or belongs to the language. So if we don't manage to disentangle this information well enough, then you could hear like a distinct accent from the mother tongue, or you would have a voice that doesn't sound much like the original speaker anymore. And yeah, if that happens, then one could say that it's not really multilingual synthesis, because it doesn't sound like the speaker, or it just has a lot of accents that it would not sound natural to a native speaker. So those are some of the challenges that we have to deal with in this research.
Sure. So could you, for the audience, showcase how multilingual text-to-speech sounds? Can you show examples of how the current state of the research you're doing in multilingual TTS sounds like?
Yeah, I prepared a few samples for that purpose. So what I will do is I have prepared a sample of a British voice artist, and I will first let you listen how she sounds like in English when we synthesize her. And then we'll let her synthesize the same text, but in French. And we want to hear the same voice characteristics. So I'll be trying to play that now. Okay, so this is in English.
Hello, this is your personal banking assistant. I noticed that 250 GBP transactions were processed on your Visa card today, at the same time, by the online shop.
So that is how the voice sounds like in English. And then we can also listen to how this would sound like in French.
Bonjour, c'est votre assistante bancaire personnelle. J'ai remarqué que de transactions de 50 € ont été traitées sur votre carte Visa aujourd'hui, à la même heure, par le magasin en ligne.
So what you can hopefully hear is that the speaker identity is quite well retained here, and that we can let the voice speak in already pretty good French. There definitely needs to be like some prosodic improvements, and a few other things need to be improved. But yeah, we're improving and improving step by step. So that just to give a little idea of what this sounds like right now and what we are aiming to accomplish.
Yeah, what you've accomplished so far is already quite amazing, I must say, in terms of how well the speaker's identity was retained, and how it was retained in the French language. So, in terms of why use actually multilingual synthesis, what would organizations, companies want to use it for actually?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Definitely, in this context. So there are a couple of scenarios where multilingual TTS can be a valuable tool for an organization. So maybe I can highlight a few. So say you're a global organization and you want to bring your message across in multiple languages. So think, for example, that you want to build like an interactive app where people can communicate with your organization, or you would want to build like an open-ended game without a fixed narration. So these are situations where it's infeasible to use a voice actor and let him or her record things, because you need to generate new speech at real time, and this is something a voice actor cannot do. So this is something where TTS can help, and things that we have actually already done at ReadSpeaker, making such custom voices. But to make such a custom voice typically takes a lot of time, because you need to think about like what style the voice should have to fit your organization. You should find a suitable voice actor that matches that style. You have to make recordings, produce the voice, and then needs time to evaluate if it sounds like you want. So this is already quite a process. And now imagine that you have to do this for not like one language, but multiple languages, because you want your organization to operate on a global scale. I think this is one of the cases where it doesn't just become like time consuming, but also expensive. And that this is one of the cases where multilingual synthesis really bears a lot of promise. So if it works like completely well, then you would be able to focus your attention and efforts just on one language. And once you've done that, you just apply the results to other languages, while just retaining the same voice identity, which means that you can speak to your audience worldwide with one and the same voice that represents you. So it's important that the quality needs to be top-notch for that. And there still needs to be some research done for that. But this is something that we're doing at ReadSpeaker and that we're making a lot of progress in. Another situation where multilingual synthesis can be very useful is when you think about so-called code switching. And what we mean with code switching is that texts, or what you want to say aloud, can contain loan words or content in another language. Or maybe there's like, if you're a train announcement system, you want something to be pronounced in a French way or in a German way if you're in Switzerland, say, for example. So with a standard TTS voice, this can be quite hard to do in a natural way. But what you do with multilingual synthesis is that you just code switch to another language, and then you can pronounce it there in the desired way. So this is something we have tried out already a little bit within our company. And what we found is that these code switches can actually be made really fluently. So you don't really hear like distortions or things like that. So I think apart from the other scenario that I sketched, I think this also holds like a lot of promise for multilingual countries or organizations that operate on a global scale. So those are just like a few of the examples that you can think of, but there are many other cases where this is like important technology.
Sure, and those, but the cases you've put forward are really illustrative of the of the potential of multilingual text-to-speech voices, and notably for companies and organizations that operate in multiple geographical markets. So how would you say neural networks improve the actual development of multilingual voices?
So I think neural networks have really been crucial to make multilingual synthesis happen in the first place. So without going into much technical detail, but like older techniques usually used like a sort of cut and paste operation where we basically glue fragments of speech together. So this is something that we call unit selection, and it can sound really well, but it's not so easy to go beyond with what was recorded in terms of variation or changing, adding something to a voice that it wasn't able to do because we simply don't have those voice fragments. So the cool thing about neural networks is that they can generalize to unseen context. And this is exactly what we need for multilingual synthesis. A lot of research in recent years has gone into finding out how we can separate certain aspects of speech and then bring them together. And this is really what we need for multilingual synthesis. So I would say that without neural networks, you couldn't really do this kind of research, which is why we focus a lot of our attention on producing text-to-speech with neural networks.
Sure, well understood. And so in what way would you say does multilingual text-to-speech empower communities, non-native speakers, respectively?
Yeah, so how I imagine it, multilingual synthesis has the potential to bring communities together in ways that were not possible before. So imagine that you live in a country where multiple languages or dialects are spoken. So let's say we take Switzerland as an example. And you would want to get your message across in multiple languages that are all important within that country. So multilingual synthesis holds the promise to do just that, like with one unified voice. So that's one aspect that it can empower communities. But another thing that I would say is what we can also do with it is we can combine like data from different languages, and in that way reduce the amount of data that we need for a new language or dialect to develop. And this is important because neural networks, although they sound really great, the TTS that comes from it, they're also quite data hungry. So you would typically need like several hours of speech in a language or dialect to get proper synthesis from it. And this can be like prohibitively expensive. So what we did at ReadSpeaker is that we recently published a paper that showed that you can actually lower the amount of data required to make a language or dialect by training a model on the data from multiple languages. and still get the same result in terms of quality. So if you use your neural networks in an intelligent way, this is possible. And this can just make it more feasible, accessible to make TTS voices in languages or dialects that might otherwise be too expensive or problematic to produce. So these are just like a few of the examples where multilingual synthesis can help communities to come together.
Yeah, really interesting. So just to close off this atelier, any closing, remarks, observations that you can add to the discussion?
Yeah, I hope that this this atelier has given you a little bit of an idea of what's possible with multilingual synthesis. So this is a thing that really starts to get more attention in the TTS research community, to work on spread our portfolio of languages. So the goal of today was to give you an idea of the potential it has. And you've heard a sample of how it sounds like currently. But it's good to think that we still need some time to develop this further, to make it to such high quality that you just couldn't hear the difference anymore. So it still takes a little bit of time to bring this to the market, but we're working on it hard, and developments in TTS go really fast right now. So this technology may be available very soon. And we hope that if that's the case, that you'll think back of this talk and approach ReadSpeaker to discuss the needs for your organization.
Well, thank you, Marcel, for all of this interesting content, ideas around the current state of multilingual text-to-speech voices. I thought it was a really interesting insights, and I hope that this will be useful for the audience here at Voice Tech Paris. So thank you very much, and have a great day.
My pleasure.